Hello, I'm Greg Sneeringer, and I'm going to present waste management as my candidate for a firm of endearment. Quick overview of what I'm going to cover in this presentation. First, I'm going to give some background on the history for waste management and take a look at their value statements as they present them. I want to engage each one of the different stakeholder relationships as they were presented in firms of endearment. So I'm going to start with the waste management's environmental impact and their sustainability efforts. I'm also going to look at their employee relationships and some of their diversity initiatives. I'm going to also look at the different ways they partner with their community and some of the outreach programs they do in the areas that they support. I'm going to look at how they deal with their customer service issues. I also want to take a look at their investor relations and why we can see them as a really attractive stock option. Also, while I was researching this company, I came upon a fairly significant accounting scandal that happened in the late 90s. I feel it was important to highlight that and go over what the consequences were, what the ramifications were for their business over the last 20 years. I'm going to finish up looking at some of the ways that they've been recognized by their peers and in the business world and some other major publications. For some background, the history of waste management started in the late 1800s in Chicago by a Dutch immigrant by the name of Harm Huizinga. He started off pretty humble. It was apparently just him with a horse-drawn cart going around the Chicago area picking up scrap. But they were able to build a business, and it was slowly expanding. Really took off after World War II, and one of the things that drove that was the baby boom and popularity of stuff like the single-use packages and disposable material took off during this time and really called for extra effort to deal with the waste that generated. The company expanded very rapidly after the Second World War up to the point in the 80s when we could see that they became the largest recycler in the world, and that's really one of the big pieces of their environmental impact is their recycling services and education outreach. Currently, they cover about 21 million customers with 50,000 employees. As we learned through firms of endearment, it's very important for an organization to have a strong vision and mission statement. We can see here that Waste Management lists their fundamental commitment as being their people first and, very importantly, to succeed with integrity. They also outline a series of core values that include diversity, the importance of their customers, their importance of safety, and their role as an environmentally conscious company. As we look at the different relationships with the stakeholders, I'm going to start with the environment because that's one of the most important roles. And it's really one of the reasons why I chose waste management as a possible firm of endearment. We can see that they feel their mission is to leave the world a better place, and we found it by helping those inhabitants find purpose and becoming its caretakers. Along with being a worldwide leader in recycling, they also work a lot with education and try to make the process of recycling as easy as possible for their customers, really removing any barriers and making it so that people can recycle as much as possible, as easily as possible. They also do a lot of work with different environmental organizations through various projects. For example, they do work reclaiming some of their landfill sites. They've been able to reclaim over 20,000 acres of habitat and stake that out for different endangered wildlife and plant species. A closer look at some of the sustainability initiatives includes being able to capture methane that comes off from their landfill and then in turn turning that into fuel for their collection trucks. And we can see this is a great positive impact, both for making sure that those greenhouse gases don't escape into the atmosphere, but also reusing them and bringing down their own fuel costs and their reliance on fossil fuels. So it's a program that hits positive aspects of environmental conservation from a lot of different angles. They also sponsor a PGA tournament, which they market as the greenest show on grass. The whole event is carefully engineered with the aim of making it a zero waste event. This means that all the different food containers, serving equipment, any of the signage, All of those things are made from biodegradable or recyclable materials. They also use this event as a platform to hold a sustainability forum, and they use that to showcase their next level recycling, reuse, and other materials related technologies. Another really interesting program is the use of closed landfill sites as solar farms. We can see that in the picture in the slide. And this, again, addresses a couple different issues at once. They're able to reuse a finished landfill site that's no longer in use, but also generate and promote the generation of alternate energy and sustainable energy plants. And last, they also invest very heavily in engineering the next generation of landfills, making sure they do stuff like protect the groundwater in the areas they're operating, set them up to support the methane capture projects that they're doing. And they're really showing this as a long-term decision-making process to ensure that they continue to operate in a sustainable way. Next, we would like to look at the waste management's relationship with their employees. We've also seen in terms of endearment how important it is to make sure that your employees are very well compensated. That helps the organization by ensuring that there's less turnover, bringing stability, and helping with their training expenses. We see here that Waste Management does a good job. They have a very competitive wage structure. They do the stock purchase plan, which firms of endearment also highlighted as a way to tie the employees' focus into the company's success. But beyond the standard compensation and benefits packages, they also do things like wellness programs that help to promote a healthy lifestyle. A lot of tuition assistance and scholarship programs that help to ensure that their employees continue with their educations and continue to grow and become a even more valuable part of the organization. One of the more interesting pieces of benefits is a subsidized child care and assistance with elder care. It's not something I had seen before in other companies, and it really goes to show that they're making a lot of effort to help their employees deal with the outside stressors in their life that could distract them and cause them issue while in their working environment. They also set up an Inclusion, Equity, and Diversity Leadership Council, and that's set to address some of the issues from the underrepresented groups of their employees. They also highlighted a lot of ways that they're trying to encourage better representation of women, especially in their leadership roles throughout the company. And Waste Management also has an active role in community partnership in all the areas they operate. They do this through local charities, and one of the most important things that they do is their environmental education programs. They partner with schools and other organizations, highlighting best practices for recycling and educating people on how to best take care of their trash and waste. You can also see some examples of their employees doing outreach through in their community, different area cleanups, and other events. One of Waste Management's most important interactions with their customers is their continuing education and how they push a lot of recycling resources to ensure that their customers are best able to use those sorts of programs. One of the issues and one of the concerning things we can see from Waste Management is some of their feedback from their customer base. I highlighted the reviews for the Better Business Bureau. We can see they only scored little over 1 star out of 5. I kind of want to highlight this and recognize that this might be a bit of a confirmation bias. Since Waste Management operates as a utility, it's sort of the sort of thing that is expected to work absolutely 100% of the time. So really the only time people are interacting with the company or rating the company very well may be when something is going wrong. I think it would be very odd for somebody to go on and positively applaud and give high ratings to a company when it's something that is expected to work completely all the time. So take that into consideration when we look at the Better Business Review. One of the things I will say is when we look at the issues page from the Better Business Bureau, every single one of the complaints that came up had been resolved, even including ones that just happened a couple days ago. So that indicates to me that Waste Management is very active with their engagement with their customers, and they try to take care of issues as soon as they arise. So we can see that this may be seen as a positive or a negative as far as their customer relations is concerned. And the last of the stakeholders that we are going to cover is the investors, and we could try to see the ways that Waste Management is an appealing investment opportunity. First off, that they're a very diversified business working on a lot of different, have a lot of different revenue streams, as we can see from the revenue mix given from 2019. So that tends to indicate that a disruption in any one area won't necessarily result in huge disruptions to the overall business. One of the other things that is apparent is they have a very long history of dividend payouts, and that can be a very important thing to some investors. Also, as we've already highlighted, their whole business model is geared towards long-term growth and sustainability, so that can help some investors who feel more comfortable with a long-term investment with the company. I will say, however, there have been some significant issues in the past that I wanted to highlight. So Waste Management was part of a large accounting scandal that ran from 1992 to 1997. Basic overview is that they manipulated their assets to make it seem that they were spending less on depreciation costs, and that some of their assets, such as different landfill sites, were more valuable or a bigger asset than they really were. All this was set to make it appear that they had higher revenues and lower costs. They were able to get away with this for 5 years because they influenced and sometimes flat out bribed their accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, to look the other way. We probably recognize Arthur Andersen from their role in the Enron scandal, which is where they did some very similar type of fraudulent accounting practices. All told, over the 5 years, they misrepresented their revenue by about $1.7 billion. They had to restate all of this in 1998, go back and show what their revenues actually were. They were off by $1.7 billion. And this was the largest restatement that has happened in the SEC's history. Fallout ended up being that Arthur Andersen was fined $220 million. Waste Management had to pay $26.8 million to settle lawsuits that were brought by shareholders who were for their fraudulent practices. Had a very negative impact on their stock price at that time. It sank very low to the point where 20 years later, they're just now barely getting back to the level they were at in the mid-90s. I thought it was important to highlight this because I believe it really impacted their business practices over the last 20 years. To where you can see they've been highlighted for recognition and awards from across their peers in the business community and from other reputable business publications like Forbes and Newsweek. They've been highlighted as being world's most ethical company by Ethisphere, and most admired company by Fortune. So we can see that they have worked very hard to reestablish their reputation. And we can see that this is an example of a company being able to build themselves back up even after they were part of a very public, very large scandal. This brings me to my conclusions. Well, the first conclusion I came looking through this is it's very difficult for a business to be really great at absolutely every different aspect of their relationship with every different stakeholder. You see that Waste Management does a very good job with their employees. They have a really great impact on the community and the environment. But they have some difficulties with customer relations, and we've seen that they've had some past issues which really negatively impacted the investors' confidence in them. We also can look and see that past issues do not necessarily doom your organization. They were able to build themselves back from digging a very large hole being in that scandal with Arthur Andersen in the 90s. But coming back from that sort of reputation, it is a long and difficult process. I would close out by saying I believe that waste management is trending in the right directions, doing the right things, building out long-term plans with a positive impact on the environment and their communities, and that they're going to be an important part of a lot of the environmental solutions to the problems that we've been seeing for the past couple decades and moving forward into the next years. They should definitely be seen as a positive impact on the community as total. Thank you for your time, and I hope you will consider waste management as a possibility for a firm of endearment. Thank you.